Welcome back to the Kata Talk Show, a podcast where we break down finance with professionals who live it every day. I'm your host, Menaj Katta, and today we bring you someone who has had the most interesting career path I've ever seen. My guest today is Leland Adams, who currently works at Merrill Lynch in finance. Before this, he worked in a nuclear power plant, an environment that most people associate with extreme pressure and responsibility. Today, we're going to explore how these two worlds connect, what the transition looked like, and what lessons you can take from it. Leland, thank you so much for joining me today. So to
Absolutely,
start us
Menaj.
off, can you introduce yourself and explain what you currently do at Merrill Lynch?
So thanks for having me, Menaj. This Leland Adams, Aiken, South Carolina. I am currently the resident director of a Merrill Lynch wealth management branch. So what that means is I'm a branch manager and I'm a financial advisor to high net worth clients. And so I really have two jobs at Merrill.
Yeah, so what originally drew you into working in finance?
So, my skill set is numbers. I can do math. In high school, I could do math. I could do chemistry. I could do physics. I could not do English. I could not, the arts, history. So, my brain is wired so that I can process information very well. And then I do think I have a skill set of being able to relate with people or interpersonal skills.
Mm.
So those two things drew me to finance. And I at the end of the day, you want to help people in finance because you're helping them meet their financial goals.
hmm So, as you said, before working at Merrill Lynch, you worked at a nuclear material plant.
Mhm.
So, what was your role there?
So I was, for most of my career there, I was a manager in the operations part of the business. So I had crews of various sizes that I managed, people that actually turned the valves, operated the plant. My last role was as a restart manager for a building that had was idle for a good little bit.
hmm So, when people hear the words nuclear material plant, they often have strong reactions or assumptions. From your experience, what was the reality of the environment on a day-to-day basis?
So on a day-to-day basis, what we did was we made nuclear materials to support the atomic weapons stockpile in the country. And yes, from an outsider's point of view, it is a very hazardous environment, but the systems that we had in place made it so that it was very manageable, and our safety records were very, very good. The first operator of the plant was a company by the name of DuPont, and DuPont literally wrote the book on how to operate plants safely. So yes, reality was that it was a safe environment to work out there when I was there.
That's really cool. I'm really happy to hear that it was really safe because right now I don't think the youth of my generation really knows that much of nuclear material plants. So, can you work us through what a day in the life would be as a manager in a nuclear material plant?
So, like I said, I managed the folks that operated the plant. So, a typical day in my life was, starting every morning to catch up on the last 12 hours of work, where we stood. So, follow up meetings, report back so that we could know the status of everything. And then we would continue the workflow and work through our plan for the next 12 hours. So, we would probably have midday checkpoints, but there was a lot of coordination of people, who's going to do what, when, and where. So that, and also there was a lot of administrative paperwork. I don't know if you've ever been familiar with any government operation, but nothing gets done unless it's written down in a government, kind of operation. And this plant is owned by the U.S. government.
Yeah. So you mentioned risk. Like, did working in a nuclear material plant change how you think about risk, accountability, and responsibility?
So you definitely, in our world there, we had a very strict set of risk parameters. And since the operator was so safety oriented, those were very conservative parameters. So as long as you stayed within those parameters, even if they were slightly exceeded, then you were still going to be in good shape. So, um, with a term called nuclear safety, um, we would be more than 2x more safe or less risky than any dangers would come about. So we were ultra conservative when it came to that. So, that's kind of how we operated.
That's really cool. So, what skills did you learn from working at a nuclear material plant?
So I had to learn how to acclimate myself to a very unfamiliar environment very quickly. Had to learn through others real quickly. Had to, form good team orientations. I was 21 years old and I had not the first clue what I was doing when I got there.
Mhm.
But all these folks that had worked there for a long period of time, they kind of took me under their wing and taught me how the plant worked and how we were going to get things done. So interpersonal skills, how to build good teams, that was probably the most important thing.
That's really cool. So, your career shift from working in a nuclear material plant to finance is definitely pretty rare. What motivated you to make this transition?
Well, my career at the plant, um, we were first operated by DuPont, wonderful company. The U.S. DuPont decided to get out of that business. The primary motivator for me to work there was to work for a company like DuPont. And when the contract changed hands, it was quite a different kind of environment. Things had changed, people change. Anytime you go through like a takeover of a public company or a new contract, it's a different environment. So I got a little bit of a push from that kind of change in what we were doing. I also went to business school at night. Um, Even before, believe it or not, before the internet in 1990, I received an MBA degree from the University of South Carolina at one of the first remote learning facilities in the country. The contraptions we had, you wouldn't believe. You and I are sitting here on a $750 machine and we can dial up and talk to anybody around the world, right?
Hmm.
What it was, it was clunky. It was cameras and microphones and telephones, and you would get a real kick. It'd be funny for you to see our setup. But I could remotely learn from the main campus in Columbia, South Carolina, which is about an hour from where we are today. And that really got me interested in, investing, capital markets, those kind of things. Yeah.
Mm. Looking back, what skills from working at a nuclear material plant transferred into your work at Merrill Lynch?
So, working with people. There's a lot of personalities in a production facilities. There can be some tense situations when it came to working with construction folks. Could be some real tense situations when working with different labor unions and those kind of things. So, got to be able to calm people down. You got to be able to think on your feet. And the math skills came pretty natural.
Yeah. So, what was the biggest challenge in your transition from entering the financial industry?
Just understanding what my role was, that I was really more of a sales role, a marketing role, and I had to be talking to strangers all the time.
Mhm.
And I was not used to that when I first got into the business. You can ask Dr. Kopp. I've never met a stranger anymore. So I really enjoy meeting new people and getting to know them. So that was probably the biggest thing I had to overcome.
Yeah, I hear that like networking and speaking to people is definitely something that's really helpful, especially in finance careers and even outside of finance careers, just being able to talk to people definitely helps in the professional world.
And also public speaking.
Mm.
So I'm still not very as accomplished as I would ultimately like to be, which I might not ever get there. But I would say when I began, I was not a very good public speaker, and I've grown into that skill set where you just get used to getting in front of people and organizing your thoughts so that you can present some ideas so people understand them a little bit.
Yeah, that makes
And that
sense.
and that's very challenging. And if you're not used to it, my advice to folks is push yourself to do that. I mean, even if you um are get sweaty palms, or you're very much out of your comfort zone, I would push you all to do that. I'll One example, in our church. So stewardship is when we talk to people about making their pledges every year. I've never spoken to our church congregation before. So this year, someone uh, volunteered me to speak to everyone, and I kind of got a kick out of it a little bit, and I think I made it through all right. My wife said I did okay.
That's nice. So, was there a specific moment you realized that your transition was the right thing for you?
So I've been at Merrill 30 years. I was an advisor for about 14 years. Um, it probably took me, I don't know, 20 years to say this was the absolute right thing to do, because, every day in our business, you've got to, earn the day, right? It's what are you going to do for me today? So it took a long time to figure out that was, it was the right thing. And it just kind of built on itself, month after month after month. But, in the financial services business, you never get really comfortable. It's always a new day, new challenge.
Hmm. So, can you give us an example of when two different days would be completely different?
So, you know, we try not to let, what's going on in the economy and markets affect us, but they can't help but affect you. So, have y'all done any studying of the global financial crisis
Mm-hmm.
in 2008?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So, pick a day during 2008, and it was a tough day. you
Mm-hmm.
know it was a horrible day, and we had to explain what's going on, and we had to keep a level head, and that was tough, and it wore you down. um, then fast forward to surviving all that. going forward. A euphoric day in 2018, 19, we had really good days. We had recovered, everything's going in the right direction. Our clients are happy. I will say that any client that we got through 2008 would be our clients for life.
Hmm.
They everyone was scared. No one knew what was going to happen the next day. The companies were going bankrupt. You know, we came very close, you know.
Hmm. So, for someone who isn't really sure about Merrill Lynch or your role at Merrill Lynch, what does the firm do?
So the the position that I have, we normally hire folks that are already have some life experiences. So I was 35 years old when I joined Merrill. Um, so what I would say is if I had to do it all over again, I think I would start looking at jobs that, you know, bank jobs. Listen, I know bank tellers that have grown into being very successful Merrill Lynch financial advisors, very successful managers, working around finance, just banking, is a really good way to kind of start and get your feet wet. The other thing, and it's these, I've never done this, but insurance agents, you know, I don't know if do you drive?
I do a little, yeah.
Okay. So where's your automobile insurance?
Ah, I couldn't tell you.
So find out. So
Hmm.
find out. You have to have automobile insurance to drive.
Hmm.
If you borrow money to buy a house, you have to have hazard insurance on your house.
Hmm.
And that's a similar model where you're helping people set up insurance and they've expanded what they do. That's another area you can start in.
Hmm.
That's, you might not think, wow, this is not a glamorous job. I'm providing auto insurance. But, you got to start somewhere and you got to have a lot of life experiences. But I say that, especially in the bank, you get to talk to people all the time
Hmm.
and that'll hone that skill set um, uh, going forward.
So you talk about banking. So what's the difference between your job in wealth management from like traditional or other finance roles such as working in private equity, doing investment banking? Like young people, we hear all of these careers. What makes yours different than these careers?
So I work in what's called the private client group. So my niche of clients are people that have retired or are about to retire, and we help them manage their retirement assets to the end of their lives, and then help them transition that for estate planning. You think about investment banking, so that is involved in part of business banking where folks are issuing public debt. As part of investment banking, you have acquisitions and mergers. You have medium-sized companies that want to go public. So that's all investment banking. And that is a highly skilled job that you know, someone out of college is not going to be on the front line for that. I wouldn't think. Now, I've never worked in that field, but if you can get the lowest level job in investment banking and learn the trade, that's invaluable. That's invaluable.
Hmm.
Um, Talk about a hedge fund manager, okay, or a portfolio manager. They're all interchangeable. So they manage big pools of money. They have a stated goal for how they manage things. Um, you know, there's a lot of regulations on how that all's done,
Hmm.
but they are trying to make money and however they can with people's investable assets.
Hmm. That makes sense. So risk is a big part in finance and especially in your role at Merrill Lynch. How do you work on mitigating risk as much as possible?
So, my job is to kind of match goals and people's personalities with their tolerance for risk. Okay. If I'm 60 years old in great health, think I'm going to live 15, 20 years in retirement, um, and I can see my account balances go down from time to time,
Mhm.
I'm going to have an appetite for risk and be able to handle that. Okay. I always tell folks when we first onboard new clients, I have not done my job properly if we've put you in a risky portfolio and the first time it goes down, you sell it. So I know through your studies, you've learned that making money in stocks is kind of easy. You buy low and you sell high, right? But emotionally, people to this day still sell out at the bottom from time to time. So we've got to match people's appetite for risk with the portfolios they have. And we have many, many tools at the firm that will tell us how different strategies act over time.
Mhm.
Okay. To take, for instance, the last couple of years, if you followed markets, we've made tremendous returns, right?
Mhm.
In the financial news media, you hear about AI all the time. AI, AI, AI. And that's kind of driven, returns here lately. Our I would say that those kind of companies are getting kind of expensive.
Mhm.
Did y'all ever study the 2000 tech bubble?
I have not, no.
So briefly, the internet came alive, in the early 90s.
Mhm.
We developed a lot of companies to be able to use the internet. And then 2000 came along, and all of the computer systems were not ever set up to have a four-digit year.
Mhm.
It was always 68, 69, 1970 would only be 70, 80, so on and so forth. Everybody was scared to death. Oh my God, when 2000 comes around, it's going to be oh oh.
Mhm.
Well,
Oh
that
yeah, I've heard of this, yeah.
so that potentially could have caused some issues.
Mhm.
So it caused a frenzy of spending in the late 1990s, and it caused a bubble. And that bubble popped in 2000, and this kind of companies you made money with in the late 90s, you did not make money with them for a long time, if at all, and some of them, no longer are around.
Hmm. That makes sense. So you talk about helping out your clients, and that's like what you do from a day to day. What does a successful day look like for you?
So, in my role, a successful day is to um, find and develop a new prospect, take a prospect from a relationship to a client.
Hmm.
You know, that's what we call a very successful day. Now, I also recruit new employees. So I call on experienced advisors from competitor firms, uh, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, those kind of companies. I'm sure you've heard of them.
Hmm.
Goldman Sachs. We don't have a Goldman Sachs in our area, but and we selectively try to increase our numbers of financial advisors at our office.
That makes sense. So,
So a successful day with that is probably, and that's a long-term game. I find somebody or I keep that process of turning them into a client going.
mm, that makes sense. So, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to make a major career shift like you?
Well, you've got to kind of trust your instincts, and understand that it's okay to make a mistake. Now, um, I was very fortunate that I would tell everyone I was pushed and I was pulled. I was being pushed from a standpoint of my environment and my current position was not what I was going to continue. It was just, it was too tough. And things had changed too much, not to my, and I didn't agree with the strategy that was going forward. So, you know, I started looking around and I talked to people enough. And, ultimately, we made a family decision and I made the move. But probably the biggest thing when you're making a career change is don't be afraid of making mistakes because you're going to make a lot of mistakes.
Mm, makes sense. So, for young people who want to get into finance, what advice would you give them? What should they start doing now?
So in high school, I would say develop the skill sets of understanding economics,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Understand markets
Mm-hmm.
and develop that interpersonal skill set where you can talk to people. Imagine this. Imagine you're a new advisor, you're 26 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking to a man or a woman or a couple or whatever that has worked all their life to save this nest egg of, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million, $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to convince them as a 26-year-old that you're going to take care of their money for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And they're looking at you like, man, you're kind of young. I don't know if I want
Mm-hmm.
to. Can I trust that? You've
That.
got to have you've got to have some very good interpersonal skills,
Mm-hmm.
be able to talk to people, convince them to do that. Now
Yeah.
we've got tools and strategies that help overcome those kind of, you know, things.
Okay. Last question. How do you think AI and artificial intelligence will change finance and especially Merrill Lynch in the future?
So I think we're going to become a more efficient company, and what that means is we can do more with less people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I use Microsoft Copilot. Have you ever heard of
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yeah, I have, yes.
I probably use Copilot every day now
Mm-hmm.
to find things, and research, whatever it is. I don't write very long emails or do write very many reports, but my assistants, when they have to do that, they've been using Copilot a lot. So it'll make our company more profitable. Less
Mm-hmm.
people makes it more profitable. If
Yeah.
I can do the same amount of revenue with less people, more profits.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So would you say young people should definitely start becoming AI literate and learn how to use artificial intelligence as much as possible?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You're going to be really, that's very important. Now, and you didn't ask me for career advice, but um, uh, if you want to go the route of how to apply AI to jobs, that's very, very important. I mean, companies like Google, Amazon, those kind of things, the developers for those companies and who are making their apps and tweaking, their formulas for things, very high demand, very high demand. That's a tough job.
That makes sense. Okay, so Mr. Adams, thank you so much for joining me on the Kata Talk Show. Your story highlights skills, disciplines, and interesting perspectives that are used in multiple industries. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on the second edition of the Kata Talk Show. Stay tuned because we're just getting started and we're going to start providing with more insights from various professionals in various careers. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to stay in touch and stay in tuned with our updates and across all of our social medias. We will be posting our next episode very soon. I'm your host, Menaj Katta, and this is the Kata Talk Show. Thank you.